everyone, and welcome to the Storied podcast, where we have fantastic guests on and where we gather wonderful stories from the world of business. I'm very, very thrilled to have truly a special guest on the podcast today, Mr. Kevin Abbott. I've had the very good fortune to work with Kevin professionally a number of times, and I can honestly say that he is the master of his craft, and master is part of what his job description is, because he traditionally it's called a master of ceremonies, otherwise known as an MC. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that Kevin is one of the most accomplished people I've ever come across in that field.
Oh, you flatterer, Annie.
Absolutely, I am not exaggerating. He is in a league of his own. So I'm very thrilled. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Kevin.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Great. So, with so much to talk about, and your expertise is going to be very difficult to pack into the space that we have, but I'm going to kick off by asking a question that I think would be very interesting for people. What is an MC?
Well, it's two letters, first off, which is some people spell it MC, literally the two letters. Others spell it EMCEE, and no one really knows which one's the correct one. I suppose where you go in the world, they are spelled differently, but both are correct. Essentially, it's a master of ceremonies. That's a person who essentially helps to manage an event from the stage with the microphone. Essentially, they are the event manager's point of the spear. They're the ones who are visible. They're almost the figurehead of the event, because they're the person who's standing up there with the microphone, facilitating the agenda and just making sure that people are having a good time. I think that's the simplest way to put it, although there's a lot more to it than that.
You've just preempted my next question, because that description is probably the most basic version of what an MC is, especially in the context of you, because you have taken that description and augmented it and enhanced it and raised it to an amazing level. So that description doesn't do you justice. In terms of what I want to focus on, you said something about being visible. When I have events with MCs, that visibility thing is something that's quite an issue. Is it possible to be too visible?
You can be too visible, and sometimes you can be a little invisible or a little less visible than you should be. When I say sometimes you need to be too visible, that's when an event organizer has asked an influencer to be their MC of choice. They've chosen an influencer for a reason. That influencer is there to generate social media likes. They're there to generate excitement and a little bit of awareness. Very often that's why they've been asked to be the MC, not particularly for their MC skills. So they would do the bare minimum, really, in terms of being a professional MC. You can be a good MC and you can be a really great MC, and there's a difference between the two. And I think that with respect to a lot of the influencers out there, they're not trained for it. They haven't got the experience of being an MC for a couple of decades. So what they're doing is essentially facilitating the agenda and bringing their own special spotlight to the stage that they're on. And that is what they've been hired for those occasions. There are other occasions where an MC almost has to fade into the background to let the event shine. So it's a case of knowing when you need to be very visible and when you need to kind of shrink back a little and let the event speak for itself. And you are more of a facilitator, that you work the microphone to let people know what's happening in the event. And that's basically your role, to shine the light onto the event itself.
I know that you've got a very cute analogy to do with a makeup artist that I've heard more than once. I'd love it if you shared that right now.
Well, a really great MC, in my opinion, is like a professional makeup artist, because they make you look good, and then they fade into the background to let you take all the credit. That's a very good MC, because they're almost a mirror. They're a redirector of attention onto where I believe the event belongs, which is your company, your event, your stated goals, your CEO, essentially you. And that's my role, to be able to shine the light onto the event rather than take the limelight for myself. So, yeah, I like to think of myself as the professional makeup artist of the MC world, even though I don't necessarily need as much of it.
Well, I just think that you being able to do that kind of very subtle redirection, it must be harder because you are, I mean, people can't tell from obviously from the podcast, but you're how tall are you?
6'4". So
6'4".
I am a presence on a stage.
You are a presence on a stage. You've got a very stage presence, incredible magnetism. And of course, we have to talk about this incredible voice that you've got. Right. So all of those things come together to make somebody that is, I don't like the word imposing because that has slightly negative connotations, but you are visible, you are present, but you still manage to do that redirection you talked about.
I think it's actually easier when you are my size and presence on the stage, especially when you have the voice that can, make people turn and look at the clouds and wonder if there's a second coming when you start speaking. But it's actually easier to redirect because I don't need to try very hard to grab the attention for myself. The attention's sort of coming my way. So I can just quite easily just push it off, redirect it to where it needs to be without actually feeling, I'm just kind of almost lessening myself rather than trying to aim something at someone else. It's just, I'm already there. I don't need to try to be there. So that's fine. Now all I need to do is just direct it towards the event itself.
Fantastic. I think that's a combination of experience, but I think you've obviously got a natural talent for this.
I think part of it actually comes from the fact, and most people won't believe me when I say this, is that I am actually a natural introvert. I struggle around, if I don't have a role to play in an event, I'm that guy standing in the corner with my glass of wine, sipping quietly by myself and hoping no one talks to me, which I've had to work on that very hard. And you and I are part of the same business network, which has been very, very helpful over the last 8 years for me to being able to craft the skill of being able to work with people, to read people, to be able to have that confidence in public. So for me, it's almost easier as an introvert to sort of shrink back a little from the limelight and let someone else take it. It's very natural for me to do that. So from that perspective, I think I'm very lucky in terms of my natural traits that I have been blessed with, that it just seems to form a nice little bundle package for the MC world.
Yeah. And I can relate so strongly because I myself am, funnily enough, an introvert, but the description that I've come across recently is an ambivert, which is a kind of a mixture of you can be selectively introvert and selectively extrovert. I think because that a lot of people actually fall into that category. It's almost something you can switch on and switch off. Depending on the situation, it's almost something you do at will to a certain extent, but it does come with time and maturity that you can do that.
I think because of the fact that most people don't believe me when I say that I'm actually introverted. And introversion, extroversion is not how you are, it's where you recharge.
Mm.
If you're introverted, you prefer to recharge on your own. If you're extroverted, you prefer to recharge around people. But I've begun referring to myself as a closet introvert. So I am very much introverted, but in the events that and with the people that when I'm around people, I have this sort of persona that comes out, which
Mm.
is quite. I wouldn't say extroverted, but it is gregarious. It's very sort of people centric. But that is also something that I have learned over many, many years. Um, those on the spectrum would call it masking to a large
Yes, I
degree, I
have
think
that
it
thought.
is.
Mm.
Uh, but it's something that we've had to really work through, and that I've had to work through and develop. And it is, interestingly enough, still very authentic.
Mm.
It's not a put on. It's not a separate, like a complete mask. It is still me. It's just a different aspect of me, which I have had to sort of coax out
Mm.
a little bit more than I would naturally do.
Yes. And I think that we all have different roles that we and different faces that we wear, but that's everybody, whether you're an introvert and an extrovert. I love the analogy of the closet, because as an introvert, I'm thinking, the closet, it's nice and quiet and I can hide, you know. But yeah, and the concept of recharging. But you know, when we did the stories together, I was very interested because you just referred to it about the learning that you had to do, and you've got an interesting background in how when you were younger, perhaps at school, you went through a period of where you literally had to study people in order to understand reactions, in order to understand behaviors, in order to understand responses. I find that very, very interesting. Would you like to share some of that?
Yeah, well, let's actually start from the beginning. So I am ADHD, and I'm also very high functioning on the spectrum.
Mm.
So that, and again, we're all on the spectrum to some degree. That's why it's called spectrum. Just some of us more so than others, and often we don't realize that we are, or we go through the majority of our life undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. So one thing that ADHD kids struggle with is, because of the fact that we're ADHD, we're it's not just that we are not paying attention because we're either hyper focused on something, or we're completely buckshot spread everywhere and we're just focusing on everything at once. But because of that, we don't pick up on things that neurotypical children naturally osmose. I'm talking about things like etiquette, social space, social cues, body language. These are all things that normal neurotypical children will learn as they're going around and as they have conversations with their friends, and they pick up on these little things. We don't, because we're just so focused on something else that we never look for this. And for me, it was, I never had a single friend in high school, not one. And that was very difficult you know, to explain to people, because at the same time, I didn't notice because I was so ADHD, and within my own brain, I would either spend my lunch breaks in the music department playing the piano, or I would be in the library, or I would take a stroll down to the bottom field and, you know, just bowl the ball in the cricket nets for a while by myself. So it never really occurred to me that I was missing something. And then miraculously, in my early 20s, I made a group of friends. They were phenomenal in the sense that they took me wrapped me up in cotton wool, threw me in a padded cell, said, "Have at it, we'll let you know when you cross the line." And I was like, there's a line? But they were basically a safe space for me. And we would all get together about 3 times a week. And they essentially would say, "Hey, Kev, that thing you just said, not cool." "Why not?" "Because this and this and this." "Oh." And that kind of gave me a realization that I had a significant social deficit. That deficit led me to then begin to study on my own, with my own reading time, sort of not at a university or anything like that, but I began to study psychology, sociology, human behavior. I began people watching. And I would sit in a coffee shop and look at a couple, 6 tables away, and try to ascertain from their body language what's happening there. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they indifferent? Are they a couple? Are they a business meeting? What's going on there? And just from the facial expressions and the body language, he's sitting back a little bit disengaged. She's sitting forward. She's really into it. All these kind of things. I began to really study and learn. And as a result, I began to read people really, really well. The difference between myself and a neurotypical is that for me, it has to be an active skill. If I'm not actively concentrating on it, I will have a brain fart, or I'll have a moment where I let slip and I say something stupid, or I do something embarrassing. I suppose we all have those moments to a large degree, but for me, it is very much an active skill that I have to concentrate on. And as a result, when I'm finished with an event, I'm done. My batteries are dead, because they have been actively powering. Because remember, it's not just understanding and reading people like normal people would read people. I go into a room of people and my brain automatically starts to analyze what's the pecking order, who's who in the zoo, who is acting in a dominant manner, who is in a quiet manner, who should I approach, who should I let approach me? When am I speaking too much? Am I speaking too little? Is my body language appropriate for the event? Am I too close? Am I too far? All these little, what am I doing with my hands? All these things are running through my head constantly. So when I've take all of these skills and now put them together into an MC role, that actually has facilitated me in being not only very good at reading people, but reading an audience. And being able to know what's going to take an audience from one emotion or one mood through to a different mood. Because you can change an audience's mood. You can work the crowd, as they say. But this has given me a very unique ability beyond just natural talent, if we can call it that. It's actually become, for me, a very specialized skill, which I use as a professional MC. And that goes for a crowd of 1,000 people or a crowd of 20.
Yes. It's almost as if when you were describing that just now, I had this image of a conductor with an orchestra of instruments and sort of like controlling the movement of the music that's being played.
And it's actually a very astute analogy that you make, because you go and you watch a symphonic performance and the orchestra, they're performing beautifully in time, and the conductor's busy conducting, and he looks like he's doing it effortlessly and just beautifully. He's carrying on. But what you don't see is the hours of work that has gone into preparing for that particular performance by the conductor. And by the same token, the MC, they don't just, or they shouldn't just pitch and play and plug in and facilitate the agenda, and that's cool. Give me the agenda. Okay, what are we doing today? We're doing this. There's so much more to it than that when you're a professional MC and you take it to a different level. And that's part of, I love that conductor analogy, because there really is a lot of work that you don't see happening behind the scenes to make an MC someone of, let's call it, next level.
That leads the way to what I want to talk about before we finish today.
I do love a good
expression. I'm segueing. I like that as well. I'm segueing into your tagline. And we won't go too much into the origin of the tagline unless you feel you want to share how you arrived at that tagline.
Well, actually, you arrived at that tagline.
I didn't want to say that because it looks as if I'm blowing my own trumpet. But it does segue very much into this idea of the high touch point MC, or the high touch MC, that we arrived at when we did our storytelling sessions together. You've talked about that, and it's almost this level of savantism that you talk about, that comes from a mixture of this learning that you had to do, this diligence that you have to do, this constant watching and feeling and responding and pivoting and managing and orchestrating, that it's almost like for you, I can think of when you first learned to drive a car and you have to think about changing gear and putting the indicator on. When you first do it, it's everything is an effort, but once you do it lots of times, it sinks into a subconscious level. And what you're talking about in the way that you manage an event is that you've taken it from that high strained effort almost of watching and learning and what do I do now, till it's becoming channeled almost as a subconscious level, but it still takes it out of you. But a high touch point MC is the end result, and that's what you describe yourself as. What is that exactly?
Well, let's change the picture to give the audience a better understanding. If you are, for instance, a high-touch travel agent, that makes it a bit easier to understand, because there are travel agents, and then there's a high-touch travel agent. The one that goes that extra mile, that pays attention to all of the details, that goes above and beyond, really, for making your experience as smooth and as memorable as possible. And that kind of helps people to focus on what a high-touch MC does. A good MC will facilitate the agenda. That's what they're there for. This happens here, this happens here, this comes after that, that comes after that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is happening now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome so-and-so to the stage. That is the facilitation of the agenda. When you start going high touch, this is when you start, well, let me not talk in the third person, let me talk about myself. I work with all the role players to make sure that the experience is as smooth as possible, not only for the guest, but for the client as well. So essentially, my ask to event organizers, very, very simple. Give me the agenda. Let me run with it. I will look after the agenda in terms of what's coming up, in terms of timekeeping, and you work very, very closely with the event organizer, and it's a skill not to step on their toes because they don't like people doing their job for them. But essentially what I say is, let me handle the agenda. Then as the event organizer, you can focus on everything else that's calling your name, and it's usually quite a lot. Knowing that the agenda, this one thing, it's taken care of. I'm in charge of that. I'm running with it. If I've got a problem, I'll come to you. So essentially, the way this kind of works out is looking at all of the small details at an event. If I'm walking past some of the outdoor high tables and I see one of the high tables has a bit of a wobble in it, it's not my job. But I will just sort of call over a waiter and say, please, can you just stabilize that table with a cork or a folded napkin or something? Because if it wobbles too much, a glass of wine could fall, somebody has red wine over their white dress, and now their event is ruined. It's the small things. I don't need to worry about a wobbly high table. That's not my job as an MC. But that kind of attention to detail does make a difference. When we're working the agenda and I come to you as the event organizer and I say, Annie, we're about 15 minutes over time with the speaker. He's kind of going on a bit long. Would you like to try, and we've got about an hour and a half to lunch, would you like to try and recoup that 15 minutes in the next hour and a half? Or do you want to let it run and potentially push lunch by 15 minutes, in which case the kitchen needs to be made aware? These are the kind of things that I will come to an event organizer without stepping on their toes and just saying, this is what I have noticed. Potential speed bump. Have you seen it? Because very often they will say, you start saying something and they say, I'm on it, stay in your lane. Okay, cool. So always go to them and, have you noticed this? Yes, I have. Okay, I just wanted to bring it to your attention, just in case. Thank you very much, appreciate it. And then we can go on. But those kind of small interactions might seem very insignificant, but at the end of the day, they make a very big impact on the outcome or the experience that the guest has in terms of it being smooth and seamless, or that the client has in terms of it being smooth and seamless. My one thing that I have curated an MC masterclass that I teach people who have to either MC an event as a once-off or they want to get into the industry. But one of the things that I say to them is, you are essentially the captain of the ship of any event. You are the one who is calm and collected and in control and in charge. When things go wrong, you're not the one going mad, running around trying to find things and sort things out. You're the one on the stage taking the attention onto yourself, because when you stand there calm and collected, everyone else can flutter around behind you going mad and sorting things out while everyone's looking at you. You are the figurehead. You're the captain. People look to you. If you are calm, very often they will be calm. So it's more than just facilitating the agenda. If you're a high-touch MC or a high-touch-point MC, these are the things that you need to be taking into account.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And also, in addition to that, something that I think it's nice to add in terms of that description of a high touch or high touch point MC is that there is a personal component to you that adds to that. I mean, when you talk about the wobbly table, obviously that's, management of the event and making sure that there aren't any mishaps that take away from the quality or the experience. But there's something else about you that I happen to know as your friend, and that is this caring dimension that you've got. When we worked together, you talked about this. I think it's because you said the captain of the ship. I was thinking of this Poseidon energy, and what flashed into my mind is this amazing tattoo that you've got that tells so much of the story about you as a man. So the high touch point MC in my mind is not just this wonderful, amazing attention to detail and the expertise you bring, but it's your caring protector energy that adds to it. And that's also what makes you vigilant and trying to head off any mishaps. You genuinely have this heart for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's on my right forearm, and there's a Poseidon's trident. and Poseidon being the protector of the ocean. And I am a very protective individual when it comes to my stuff, although I don't have a lot of it because I'm very much a minimalist, but also my people. You come for my people, I'm coming for you. And that same energy is what I use for or in my events. I'm protective of my clients' events. So it's not, for me, it's not just about facilitating the agenda. I don't grab a waiter and ask them to fix the wobbly high table because it's a wobbly high table and my OCD's kicking in. I do it because if it's not done, it could negatively affect the experience of a guest, and potentially it could negatively experience or could negatively affect the experience of the client. The guest leaves a negative review, or the client or the venue wasn't happy with the one supplier, and so there's a deterioration in relationships and all this nonsense that starts happening and cascading effect, all because of a wobbly high table. So let's fix the high table. Let's make those little things bigger things before they become big things, or treat them as if they are big things. For me, I've always had this stick my nose where it sometimes doesn't belong to fix problems. And very often it can become a stay in your lane if somebody's nose gets put out. But by the same token, it's the manner in which you go about it. You don't fix the high table. It's, hi, sorry, I don't know if you've noticed that the high table's not, it's a little wobbly. Can you just find something and sort it out? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's the kindness, the understanding. It's the empathy.
It's like you've read my mind. I was waiting. As soon as you finished speaking,
I read your emotional state there.
Yes, you're doing the thing. You're doing that reading people thing, because the word that I had in my mind very powerfully was your empathy. Within the professional context and outside of the professional context, you are a defender. You are standing up for people's rights. You are the sort of person that doesn't like to stand by and see injustice happen. This is how I know you. Whether it's in the context of an event or not, that's part of the man. And possibly what you shared about your background growing up is where that empathy comes from, because if anyone that's been on the receiving end of perhaps being isolated or alienated or marginalized is more likely to have empathy for others in that situation. So possibly that's what's feeding into that as well. But that is part of who you are, and part of this whole package that we've talked about, that makes you a good MC and just a great mate, I have to say.
Thank you. Part of that empathy is, and it's really something that I'm concentrating on and focusing on in terms of people who are neurodivergent. Being so myself, we often we learn to mask very early on in terms of appearing normal. And what that taught me is that the face that you see is not always reflecting the person behind it. And just engaging with a little bit of empathy allows you to open up an entire new world to a person where you are able to see them from their perspective, not from your viewpoint. And I think for me that the empathy thing it really has made one specific emphasis for me, which is that I want to be a voice to represent everyone who isn't represented in every room I'm in. If I'm in a room and there's someone who is in that room who does not have a voice or does not feel that they can speak, I want to be representative of that person, whether that is a minority or it is a person of color or it is a member of the LGBTQ community, whoever it is, or even someone who's neurodiverse. I want to be able to share an understanding with them from where they're coming from. Doesn't mean I know where they're coming from. That's a different story. But by employing empathy, I at the very least am open to hearing where they're coming from. I'm open to their experience, and I'm intentionally minimizing my own bleed into any situation. So that, again, very, very intentional. It has to be. It's got to be a very active skill in order to minimize yourself, which is what empathy is. It's minimizing your own bleed of your own issues, your own background, your own story into any given situation, and holding space for someone else to be able to input into that situation. So I don't necessarily need to be the voice for that person, but I can at least hold space for them where they feel the freedom to be able to speak.
So their voice can be heard.
And that is, it's more difficult in a crowd situation, but it can be affected in a crowd situation as well as in a smaller group setting, and obviously more so, most so in a one-on-one. But this empathy, I think, has been one of the driving factors in helping me to be an MC that is not just looking at facilitating the agenda, but actually going, how can I make the situation better? How can I improve the situation? What is the event organizer feeling right now? What are they thinking? And it might not be the event that we're at. They might be having a really difficult time. I was at a wedding where an event organizer had recently suffered a loss. And they, at one point, I noticed they were around the side and the other side of the hedge, just sort of having a bit of a cry and just sort of like keeping the makeup and the mascara from running, and got the finger technique all sorted. But as she sort of gathered herself, came out, and I said, I noticed that you are going through some things. If you need some assistance, I'm here. I've got the experience and I can help you. If you need something, call on me. Thank you so much. So it's the small things that go beyond, again, just facilitating the agenda. And I harp on that because that is what most MCs think they're there to do, is to run the agenda. They're not. That is a minuscule part of what you do. You are there to be the anchorman. When you look at the old news broadcasters, and you have the Walter Cronkites of yesteryear, and let's bring it into more modern times, the Ron Burgundy. You've got the anchorman, who is that centerpiece, that statue of confidence, and everyone can move around and the team runs behind. But you are that confidence. You are that center point. You are that stability within the event. And that's essentially what the audience sees when they see you, is they see the stability. They see the confidence. They see the calmness. They see in control. And if you think about it, if you're sitting in an event as an audience member and the agenda is not necessarily running according to the program that you've got printed out in front of you, you start feeling anxious. And you're like, that was supposed to be like 15 minutes ago. Are we going to be running late? Are we going to be... And just having the MC, hi folks, I know we had this coming up in 15 minutes ago. We will be getting to it. We're going to be shuffling some things around. Not to worry, it's all under control. You can sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up next, we have our great speaker, etc.
You're so good. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You're so, so good. I just want to, what you've given is a definition of what an MC is from so much depth and richness that I'm sure that everyone listening to this podcast will have a whole new idea of what it can be and perhaps what it should be. And the descriptions that you've given are very, very resonant. What I'd like to know as we sort of move towards the end of this session, all this talent, all this experience, all this empathy, all this skill, what does the future hold? What's the big dream for you? Where would you like to be going forward?
Well, the interesting thing, and just jumping backwards half a step, something that you brought up during our story bank, which was so interesting to me, was the concept of social listening. And it is the most associated term when someone Googles the word MC. They Google MC, and the most sought term was script, which tells me two things. One, that there are a lot of MC, let's not call them wannabes, but there are a lot of people who are emceeing or asked to MC who either don't have the experience, the years on the stage, or they don't have the knowledge to be able to craft something. So for me, part of the step forward is doing these curated MC one-day masterclasses where I can share this knowledge. Gary Vaynerchuk, he is so famous for giving his knowledge away. And you don't lose something by giving away knowledge. You only elevate yourself as an expert in the field. I know the big positive guy, Andre Dutoy. Andre and I have worked together to curate this MC masterclass. So that's one of the things that I want to be doing, is to be able to bring a new generation of MCs to the fore, where I think the most common comment that I receive at these masterclasses is, wow, I didn't know there was so much to MCing. You know so much. But aside from that, two things I want to do. The one is to be the go-to MC in South Africa for your corporate events, for the conferences, expos. I want to be that guy who is MC, we need Kevin. Not just an MC, high-touch MC. And the other is that I would really like to be able to move into the UAE and into the European market as well. Because you've mentioned the voice. One of the things that is particularly unique about my voice is that I have what is referred to as an international neutral accent. People from England think I'm from South Africa. People from South Africa think I'm from England. So basically, I'm pretty much in the middle of the Atlantic without a paddle. Is that a definition of a mid-Atlantic accent? I don't know. But essentially, wherever you go in the world, because of the fact that I speak clearly with good diction and you can hear the enunciation of all the syllables in my words, but at the same time, I have a smoothness running over, so there's not a disjointed feeling to it. Anywhere that English is spoken or understood, there I will be easily understood and an ideal person to be able to host an event, because of the fact that globally it's not a regional accent that we all know the regional accents that are somewhat more difficult to understand than others. But that is one of the things that I want to do, is to move into that European UAE market.
After anybody hearing this podcast today, I'm sure that you will move right up to their mental search engine. I certainly think that nobody would give a second thought than to have you as their MC wherever you happen to be. And I wish we had more time, because your accents that you do, I know you saw them talking. He does crazy accents, and I mean, honestly, I'm from the UK, and when I hear his Scottish accent, the regional accent, it's so on point. And that's a whole other skill set that we haven't got time to talk about, because we're focusing on the MC work. But you are also a very skilled sort of voice actor as well, and that's all part of the parcel. But I'm sure that because of the rich interaction and the insights that you've shared today, you are definitely going to achieve that ambition. You're, for me, non-negotiable, and I recommend you wherever I go, whenever I hear somebody asking for an MC. Any closing comments that you'd like to add?
Well, I do have a closing comment, and that is the fact that where I am now as an MC, with my image, my branding, everything that has shifted so much for me in the last 9-10 months or so, a lot of it is largely due to you. And that is because of the fact that when I initially connected with you and I thought, ooh, storied, I need to be able to condense my story into something that is workable, not just an elevator pitch. Because here, this is the difference. You can have an elevator pitch, which is, let's call it one of your lowest common denominators in your business. What you do, how you solve a problem, and who you're wanting to connect with. That's your elevator pitch. You can run it in 30 seconds, nice and easy. But that having an elevator pitch is not the same as distilling down your story into manageable, marketable moments. Things like high touch, things like the protector, things like the anchor man. These are all images which came out of the story bank, which I did with you. And I am eternally grateful, and also would be very amiss if I didn't punch you on your own podcast, because being able to distill somebody's essence of their business and themselves, that is a very unique and a singular skill that I think you have, which has essentially revolutionized my business. It's brought me to the point where I am now able to say exactly what I do, why I'm different, and what I'm looking to accomplish. It has pushed me into a different mind frame. I'm hoping very soon it'll push me into a different tax bracket too. But this is what the story bank can do for you. And so I very, very strongly recommend for anyone at home who is watching this and you wanting to maximize your own business, your own understanding of your business, and really it is, you help people to grasp what it is that their business is actually about. I would very, very much strongly recommend getting in touch with Annie and doing the story bank sessions for yourself.
I would have paid for that advert. That's how good it was. thank you so much for that endorsement. And I have to say, it was an absolute pleasure to do that work with you. And praise from someone of your caliber like that means the world to me, beyond business. As I say, we are good friends, we are good mates. And, I just feel blessed to know you. And thank you so much for your time today. That was that was a masterclass in how to do a podcast. That's another skill that we've just discovered about you today, in addition to the fact that you are and soon will be a global high touch point MC.
Well, we will see each other on the stage. I am absolutely certain of it.
Thank you, Kevin.